If I had to list the titles that best exemplify the ways video games are uniquely good at telling stories, I would pick Nier Automata, Journey, Dark Souls, Papers, Please, and Devil May Cry 5. But in the case of that last one, it's not because the game was built from the ground up to be narrowly driven or atmospheric. I picked it because despite how over-the-top and video gamey the Devil May Cry series is, they managed to illustrate a character arc straight out of a shonen battle anime, and managed to do it subtly through gameplay. But seeing how I was pretentious enough to put Ludonarrative in the title of this video, I might as well explore all the ways the game tells its story through gameplay. I want to talk about two things in Devil May Cry 5. Firstly, the music, and then Nero's character arc. So spoilers are afoot. If you want to go in blind, Devil May Cry is a character action game that gives players a high skill ceiling and a ranking system to judge their performances on. I've already said in my Bayonetta review how having a cocky Devil May Cry protagonist can feed into this type of game, but Devil May Cry 5 is exceptional in how it uses dynamic music to complement its scoring system. Now, dynamic music has been in video games for a long time. The most obvious examples being power-ups like the star in Mario, or a boss whose music changes when they enter their final form. But I've seldom seen any games take it further than that, and Devil May Cry 5 goes as far as I can imagine. Every playable character in Devil May Cry 5 has their own theme song, and if you look them up on YouTube, you'll find they range from 3 to 9 minutes long. All the songs come with a lot of phases ranging in intensity. In every fight you're judged in real time, and as your rank goes from C to B or A to S, the music will jump to the next phase.
Ow! You threw off my groove!
The chorus is usually where the big hook and the most memorable parts of a song are, so by performing well, you're rewarded with the most kick-ass part of your theme song at the height of your intense battle, creating another incentive to get that S rank and to get Dante fighting as perfectly as the real Dante would. It's easily the most interesting case of dynamic music in any video game I've ever played. Now, it's not perfect. If you get an S rank, the chorus will play to completion even if you dip back down to C. I feel like abruptly halting the chorus would leave a stronger impact, but I'm guessing this was done to minimize the amount of jumping around and to not mess with the rhythm. And I'm sure some will argue that just playing the songs outright would have been more enjoyable for them. But imagine you're a scrub who can't get S rank, because they spam the same attacks over and over. Then imagine how cool it would feel to finally get one and hear the chorus for the first time. That was me 3 years ago.
Are you done?
Now with that out of the way, let's talk about Nero. During your first run, Nero feels underpowered and incomplete. And this is intentional, as Nero loses his signature ability from the last game, his Devilbringer, along with his arm. He only has access to one sword and one gun, and that never changes. The Devil Breakers help, but they're quite literally a crutch, and one that's easily broken. It wasn't uncommon for me to go half a level without a Devil Breaker in my first playthrough, because I sucked and I keep getting hit. And because of that fear of losing a breaker, I didn't use any of the self-destruct attacks. Why intentionally destroy a breaker when I might need a whole magazine for the boss waiting at the end of the level? I even felt kinda bitter when deciding whether or not to buy more Devil Breakers for Nero. After all, these were temporary consumables, unlike most of the abilities in the shop. Like, am I making a bad short-term investment by buying more for Nero? And to top it off, Nero can't use the DT gauge for anything. V gets multiple ways to expend his gauge. Heck, Dante gets 2 different forms with separate DT bars. But Nero gets nothing. It's a whole aspect of the progression system that just ignores him. And as you get further into the story, it only gets easier to ignore Nero. The later half of the campaign is mostly Dante levels, as if we're back in Devil May Cry 4 and Nero has to make room for the big boys to play. It's so easy to get an S rank with Dante or V. Dante can instantly switch between weapons to change things up, and V basically gets an instant S when you summon Nightmare. But with Nero, it's always a struggle. The story and gameplay both go out of their way to undermine Nero multiple times in multiple ways. But that was always the plan. After all, every great payoff needs a strong setup.
Hello?
All his regrets, insecurities, and his failures have been building up his frustrations. And Nero unleashes it all in the most positive, productive way possible. Not to start a fight, or even to finish a fight, but to merely dissipate it. Nero cares about family in a way Dante and Virgil don't. He had a far more healthy upbringing, so when everyone else is acting like someone has to die, it only confuses him. But that confusion passes, and he knows what he has to do. Entering the final boss, Nero has access to his Devil Bringer again. This gives him a second permanent melee option. He's regained his confidence, and with it came his old arm. And Nero isn't just back to his old self, he's stronger than ever, with a new form unlike anything Dante and Virgil have used before, with the wings of an angel as if to resemble the brother he lost. And this fight goes out of its way to amp Nero with infinite DT, at least on the lower difficulties, which you'll have to play through at least once to unlock the higher ones. So everyone's first time pulling Nero's Devil Trigger is going to have this feeling of empowerment. And your Devil Bringer can instantly shut down some of Virgil's flashier attacks, meaning your fight against Virgil will be much easier as Nero than it was Dante. Conventional wisdom says the final fight should be the hardest, and while this boss isn't a walk in the park, it still emphasizes how much stronger Nero has become. The two brothers can't dismiss Nero anymore, and the same will apply to most players. It's obvious that Nero is the character we'd look forward to most replaying the game. He just unlocked 2 super cool abilities. Don't you want to go back to the first level and see if you can pull his Devil Bringer onto that boss? Even the dynamic music we talked about comes back in a more conventional way. The music will start with a somber violin piece. As this is a father and son fight, there's something inherently sad about it. But once you've used your Devil Trigger or get Virgil's health down to a certain point, this energetic electric mix of Nero's theme will play. And seeing how much damage the Bringer attacks do, you're most likely to see the beat drop in this exact way.
Hey, want to listen to some tunes?
Thanks to how the difficulty is made and what abilities you have throughout the campaign, I was always right there where Nero was emotionally. I was frustrated with my weakness when I ran out of Devil Breakers. I felt something was missing when Nero got zilch from the DT upgrades. I felt catharsis when I pulled my Devil Trigger over and over again against Virgil. And after the final playthrough, I felt like this was always how Nero was meant to play. Nero is complete now, and I'm sure he feels the same way after 5. And now that you have 5 more difficulty options to play on, Every time you pick up Nero, he'll play just as he was always meant to. Devil May Cry has always been about replaying the game to get a stylish rank. And after unlocking Nero's triggers and buster abilities, that feeling of this is where the game actually starts kicks in stronger than ever before. Replaying the game with Nero's new abilities might not be canon or whatever, but chronologically it works from the player's perspective, as they can now reap the rewards of Nero's character arc every time they replay the game. Nero's Devil Trigger and grab attacks create a more solid foundation for his move pool. So many devastating attacks and awesome animations now available at all times, no longer needing a certain breaker to use them. And Nero's new form just boosts everything and comes with 2 really powerful attacks. It even comes with some very interesting things that I didn't realize until way late into the game. Nero's gun can be used even mid-grab while transformed, and his bringer can slam enemies during buster or melee attacks for additional damage. You can even charge up breaker attacks mid-grab. It's that feeling of abilities stacking on top of other abilities that makes Nero feel complete from a gameplay perspective. And slowly discovering these little tricks tap into what I kept gushing about in my Bayonetta video. This even makes menial tasks easier. Like, it's always annoying me to use up my charge shot or exceed gauge to break red orbs in between fights, but now Nero can just punch them with his bringer. But most importantly, now the player doesn't have to fear losing their devil breakers so much. And once you accept how expendable they are, you're probably going to be willing to experiment with their self-destruct attacks, which will only further improve your skills and make Nero that much more of an unstoppable force. Even the breakaway mechanic is something I severely underestimated at first. In my first run, destroying my own breaker felt like a stupid decision, but it simply isn't anymore. The risk-reward element is still there, and that's great, but the breakers are not your lifeline anymore. They don't complete you, it's the other way around. In a very literal sense, he's completed his character arc, and so have you. The inconvenience of the Devil Breakers works so well with the longevity of the game. Firstly, by truly distinguishing Nero from Dante and Virgil. If the brothers are characters who test your creativity with abundant weapons and styles that can be switched on the fly, then Nero is a character who tests your adaptability, with consumable weapons and grab attacks that can vary depending on the enemy. This inability to cycle through breakers without finding a new arm or breaking a current one adds to this arcade-like quality that I came to simply love. And once you're in the late game and have orbs to spare, you can load them up in whatever way you want. Every breaker is just useful enough to when you get good, you can do some wild things with them. Even on your first run, if you're good at video games, you won't necessarily struggle with Nero at all. The game never compromises the gameplay to tell its story. They just perfectly work together. There is more to Nero's arc, like his desire for power mirrors his father's in a way, or him being the moral center of the story while also being the most outwardly aggressive and angry fighter is important for the poison apple symbolism, or the ways in which DMC4 was a good build-up to 5, etc. But it's the Ludonarrative that really impressed me. Some of you might be rolling your eyes because this might not sound very unique. Tons of games give the players strong abilities near the end, and some of them are part of a character arc, and I like it when they do that. But Nero's story is the first time I've seen this level of detail put into that practice within a video game, and done in ways only a video game can do it. It's those details that enamored me, and made Nero one of my favorite protagonists in any video game, period. DMC5 shows how an unambiguously gameplay-first arcade hack-and-slash title can still use Ludonarrative in all sorts of smokin', sexy, and stylish ways. Thank you all for watching. Like and sub if you want to see more, and I'll see ya in the next one.